The knock came just as the sun slipped behind the Manhattan skyline, painting the hallway in a burnt orange glow. Elena Marlowe froze mid-step, one hand unconsciously resting on the curve of her 6-month belly. She wasn't expecting anyone, certainly not at this hour, and definitely not with that familiar rhythm. Slow, confident, entitled, the kind of knock belonging to a man who used to believe the world would rearrange itself for him. Her son, Jamie, looked up from the dining table, his small fingers still stained with watercolor paint. "Mom?" he whispered, eyes wide but not afraid, just curious, the way only a child who has seen too much too young can be. Elena's breath tangled in her throat. She hadn't heard that knock in 2 years. 2 years since the night she'd been thrown out in the cold, pregnant, humiliated, betrayed by the man she trusted and the friend she loved like a sister. 2 years since she had cried until her ribcage ached, until tears weren't tears anymore, but a confession of how broken a person could become. She opened the door. Caleb Foster stood there, older, thinner, holding the kind of desperation that clings to a man who has lost everything. His once perfect suit was wrinkled, his confidence gone, his smile trembling. He looked past Elena as if expecting her to collapse into his arms, begging him to stay, as if the last 2 years hadn't happened. "Elena," he breathed, voice cracking like he was the injured one. Before she could answer, Jamie stepped in front of her. His little shoulders squared, chin lifted, eyes cold in a way no child should ever be. "My mom doesn't cry anymore," he said. Caleb blinked, stunned by the authority in a 7-year-old's voice. And for the first time, Elena realized Jamie wasn't just protecting her, he was warning Caleb. What none of them knew was that this night wouldn't end with a conversation, but with a revelation that would flip their lives upside down. Elena could still remember the night everything shattered, not in pieces, but in silence. It was 2 years earlier, in their warm, brick-walled apartment overlooking Riverside Park, a place she once believed would be the backdrop of her happiest memories. She had spent the evening folding tiny baby clothes she'd bought on sale, humming softly while Jamie colored beside her. Back then, she was 5 months pregnant, exhausted but glowing, the quiet glow of a woman who thought love was enough. Caleb had texted her earlier that he'd be working late again. Riley, her best friend of 15 years, had also canceled their dinner plans, claiming she was too overwhelmed to talk. Elena didn't think much of it. She trusted them both too deeply, too blindly. Around 10 p.m., a chill swept through the apartment. Elena remembered checking the window, thinking she'd left it open. But no, the cold was coming from inside her, a sudden tightening in her chest, a whisper of fear she couldn't explain. Pregnant women feel things, sense things. She brushed it off. Then a message pinged on her phone. A neighbor. "Your husband and your friend just went into your building. Thought you were with them?" No emoji. No explanation. Just facts. Elena's pulse hammered. It didn't make sense. Caleb said he was working. Riley said she was home resting. Maybe they planned a surprise? Maybe it was innocent. She grabbed her coat, her keys, and waddled down the stairs with the heaviness of a woman carrying more than a child. The elevator chimed on the 8th floor. What she heard first was laughter. Riley's high, breathy, followed by Caleb's low murmur, the one he used to reserve only for Elena. The door to her own apartment was slightly open. Elena pushed it wider. And the world she knew, soft, predictable, hopeful, snapped like a brittle twig. Caleb and Riley were tangled together on the couch. The couch Elena had chosen, the blanket she had knitted draped over them. Riley froze. Caleb shot up, eyes wide, mouth open, with excuses that sounded pathetic even in silence. Elena, wait, listen. She didn't scream. She didn't faint. She didn't even cry. Instead, she felt something far worse. The numbness of a woman realizing she had been the only one fighting for a life that no one else wanted. Jamie appeared behind her, rubbing his eyes. "Mom, why are we leaving?" That night, Elena packed one suitcase. Caleb didn't stop her. Riley didn't apologize. And something inside Elena, something tender and irreplaceable, died quietly. What they didn't know was that the woman who walked out that night would return one day stronger than either of them could imagine, and with an ally they never saw coming. Elena could still remember the night, everything shattered not in pieces, but in silence. It was 2 years earlier, in their warm, brick-walled apartment overlooking Riverside Park, a place she once believed would be the backdrop of her happiest memories. She had spent the evening folding tiny baby clothes she'd bought on sale, humming softly while Jamie colored beside her. Back then, she was 5 months pregnant, exhausted but glowing, the quiet glow of a woman who thought love was enough. Caleb had texted her earlier that he'd be working late again. Riley, her best friend of 15 years, had also canceled their dinner plans, claiming she was too overwhelmed to talk. Elena didn't think much of it. She trusted them both too deeply, too blindly. Around 10 p.m., a chill swept through the apartment. Elena remembered checking the window, thinking she'd left it open. But no, the cold was coming from inside her, a sudden tightening in her chest, a whisper of fear she couldn't explain. Pregnant women feel things, sense things. She brushed it off. Then a message pinged on her phone. A neighbor. Your husband and your friend just went into your building. Thought you were with them? No emoji. No explanation. Just facts. Elena's pulse hammered. It didn't make sense. Caleb said he was working. Riley said she was home resting. Maybe they planned a surprise? Maybe it was innocent. She grabbed her coat, her keys, and waddled down the stairs with the heaviness of a woman carrying more than a child. The elevator chimed on the 8th floor. What she heard first was laughter. Riley's, high, breathy, followed by Caleb's low murmur, the one he used to reserve only for Elena. The door to her own apartment was slightly open. Elena pushed it wider, and the world she knew, soft, predictable, hopeful, snapped like a brittle twig. Caleb and Riley were tangled together on the couch Elena had chosen, the blanket she had knitted draped over them. Riley froze. Caleb shot up, eyes wide, mouth open with excuses that sounded pathetic even in silence. Elena, wait, listen. She didn't scream, she didn't faint, she didn't even cry. Instead, she felt something far worse. The numbness of a woman realizing she had been the only one fighting for a life that no one else wanted. Jamie appeared behind her, rubbing his eyes. Mom, why are we leaving? That night, Elena packed one suitcase. Caleb didn't stop her. Riley didn't apologize. And something inside Elena, something tender and irreplaceable, died quietly. What they didn't know was that the woman who walked out that night would return one day stronger than either of them could imagine, and with an ally they never saw coming. Elena didn't realize how quickly a life could collapse, not like a building, loud and dramatic, but like a sandcastle touched by the tide. Quiet, slow, inevitable. By the morning after the betrayal, she expected at least a conversation, an apology, a desperate attempt from Caleb to fix what he had broken. But when she returned to the apartment, her apartment, everything had changed. Her key no longer worked. For a moment, she thought she had grabbed the wrong one. Pregnancy, brain fog, and exhaustion mixing together. She tried again, hands trembling. Nothing. Then Caleb opened the door just enough to look out, not enough to invite her in. Elena, maybe it's better if you stay somewhere else for now, he said, voice low but firm, as if she were the problem. For now, she whispered. Caleb, this is our home. Jamie lives here. I live here. He exhaled like she was exhausting him. You need space. And honestly, I do too. Things happen. Emotions get messy. We both need clarity. Clarity. A word that tasted like poison. Then Riley appeared behind him, wearing Elena's robe, her robe, and offered a fake sympathetic smile. Elena, we just think it's best you focus on your pregnancy without tension. Tension. The woman sleeping with her husband called it tension. Jamie tugged on Elena's sleeve, sensing everything without understanding it. That made it worse. Infinitely worse. Caleb stepped outside, closing the door behind him just enough to hide Riley. Look, Elena, I already talked to the landlord. The lease is under my name. Legally, it's cleaner if you take some time away, just until we figure things out. You talked to the landlord? Her voice cracked. Before I even came back? He didn't blink. Didn't flinch. It was the responsible thing to do. Responsible. That word alone nearly knocked her to her knees. She walked away holding Jamie's hand, suitcase rolling unevenly over cracked pavement, New York wind slicing through her coat. Jaime looked up at her. Mom, where are we going? She didn't know. She truly didn't. She had no savings. Caleb had always handled the finances. Her teaching job barely paid for groceries. She had no family left, no friends she could trust. All she had was a baby kicking inside her and a small boy trying to be brave for her. That afternoon, she signed a short-term rental for a tiny basement apartment in Queens. Mold on the walls, rusty pipes, one small window near the ceiling. But it was hers, and it was the place where she would fall apart before learning how to rebuild. What Elena didn't know was that someone had been quietly watching her fall and was preparing to pull her back into a world she had no idea she belonged to. The basement apartment in Queens smelled faintly of damp concrete and old radiator heat, a smell Elena would later associate with survival. At first, she tried to pretend it was temporary, a brief stop in a long journey. But temporary has a way of stretching when life offers no lifeline. The space was barely large enough for a twin mattress, a fold-out cot for Jamie, and a small table she found on the sidewalk with a handwritten sign that said free. The single window high on the wall showed only ankles of people walking by, sometimes a stray cat, sometimes nothing at all. Winter crept in through every crack, sharper than grief. Still, Elena tried. Every morning she packed Jamie's lunch, smoothing his hair with trembling fingers. She walked him to school under flickering streetlights while holding her belly, praying her daughter, yes, she already thought of the baby as her daughter would stay strong despite the stress piercing every hour. She taught part-time art classes at a community center, earning just enough to keep the lights on. At night, when Jamie slept, she painted on scraps of cardboard because canvas was too expensive. Her strokes were messy at first, bruised with emotion, but the more she painted, the more her soul quietly stitched itself back together. Jamie noticed the change more than she did. "Mom," he whispered one night, curling beside her, "even when you're sad, you look brave." Brave. A word she never believed belonged to her. She kissed his forehead. "I'm trying, sweetheart." Money was always tight. Some weeks she had to choose between groceries and subway fare. Other weeks she stretched soup over 3 nights. And the medical bills for her pregnancy, she didn't dare think about them. She skipped appointments, telling herself everything was fine. But in the quiet moments, usually around 3 a.m., when the world softened, she cried into her pillow, careful not to wake her son. The loneliness was a weight pressing against her chest, squeezing the breath from her lungs. And yet, something else was forming too. A spark, a stubbornness, a whisper inside her saying she deserved more than the life she'd been pushed into. What Elena didn't know was that one of her paintings, one she had left drying near the basement window, had caught the eye of someone passing by. Someone who recognized talent instantly, someone who had the power to change everything. And in just a few days, her life would collide with a man she once thought she would never meet again, setting off a chain of events that not even betrayal could have prepared her for. Elena hadn't realized how much she cried, how often, how quietly, how instinctively, until the day Jamie asked her a question no 7-year-old should ever have to ask. "Mom, am I the reason you're sad?" She froze, dish towel in hand, standing over the chipped sink in their basement apartment. The air smelled of boiled pasta and winter air slipping under the door. Her pregnancy belly ached from standing too long, but nothing hurt more than hearing those words come from her son, the one person she had fought hardest to protect. She knelt, wincing as her knees touched the cold tile. "Jamie, no, you're the reason I keep going." He didn't look convinced. Kids never miss the truth. They only swallow it quietly until it becomes too heavy. That night, Elena tried to be strong. She smiled wider, laughed louder, tucked him in with extra blankets. But when he fell asleep, she felt the familiar burn in her throat, the tears she kept locked inside like some shameful secret. She turned her face toward the wall so he wouldn't hear her. But children hear things mothers never intend them to. What she didn't know, what she would only learn much later, was that Jamie had been counting the nights she cried. Not out of judgment, but out of fear that someday she would break and he wouldn't know how to fix her. And then came the night she couldn't hide it. Her back seized with sharp pain, her pregnancy stretching her body past exhaustion. She lowered herself to the floor, breathing through clenched teeth. Panic surged, the memory of being denied prenatal care haunting her. Jamie woke to the sound of her muffled sobs. In the dim glow of their second-hand lamp, he climbed into her lap and wrapped his small arms around her shoulders, his cheek pressed against hers, warm and damp. "It's okay, Mom," he whispered. "I'll be strong until you're strong again." Children shouldn't have to speak like that, but trauma ages them. Love grows them. And in that moment, between his trembling voice and her trembling heart, Elena made herself a promise. She would never let her son see her fall apart again. She wiped her tears, kissed his forehead, and told him everything would be different soon, even though she didn't know how. But fate was already moving pieces she couldn't see. Because the very next morning, someone knocked on her door, someone who had seen her painting through the basement window. Someone whose arrival would turn her quiet suffering into the beginning of a transformation no one, not even Elena, could have predicted. The knock that came the next morning wasn't like Caleb's heavy, entitled pounding. This one was gentle, hesitant, almost careful. Elena wiped her hands on her paint-stained shirt and opened the basement door, expecting a neighbor or the landlord reminding her again that the rent was due in 5 days. Instead, a man she hadn't seen in years stood beneath the dim hallway light. Adrian Cole. Not in a tailored suit like the billion-dollar articles wrote about him, not surrounded by assistants or photographers or the aura of wealth he was known for. No, here he was in a simple charcoal coat, holding one of her paintings in his hands like it was something fragile. "Are you the artist?" he asked, voice steady but warm. For a moment, Elena forgot how to breathe. She remembered him vaguely, a judge at a regional art competition back when she was 18, before life became bills and diapers and Caleb's impossible standards. Back when she believed she could be someone. "That's mine," she said, embarrassed by the cardboard canvas. Adrian nodded. "I saw it through your window. I had to ask if you'd be willing to show it. I own Cole Galleries in Manhattan." She blinked. "The Cole Galleries?" He smiled gently. "Just, Adrian is fine." Her cheeks flushed. Her basement apartment, her oversized maternity clothes, the peeling paint on the ceiling, everything suddenly felt exposed under his quiet gaze. But not judged. Never judged. Jamie peeked from behind her, clutching his stuffed dinosaur. Adrian crouched to meet his eyes. "You must be the brave one around here," he said softly. Jamie nodded, shy but curious. Elena's heartbeat quickened. No man had ever spoken to her son like that, not Caleb, not even friends. Adrian's tone wasn't pity, it was respect. "I'd like to represent your work," Adrian continued, standing again. "But more importantly, I'd like to help you. You look like someone who's been carrying too much alone." For the first time in months, Elena felt her throat tighten in a different way, not from grief, but from the terror of hope creeping in too quickly. "I don't know if I'm ready," she whispered. "No one ever is," Adrian replied, "but talent waits for no one. And I don't want to see yours fade away in a place that doesn't deserve you." Behind him, winter sunlight broke through the hallway window, catching the edges of her painting and illuminating the tears she didn't bother hiding. Because for the first time since her world collapsed, she felt seen and valued. But what Elena didn't know, what she couldn't even imagine, was that Adrian already knew who she was long before this moment, and that his reappearance in her life was not a coincidence. Elena stood frozen in the doorway long after Adrian left, the quiet basement suddenly feeling too small for the hope he had just planted in her hands. Her painting, something she had poured her exhaustion and heartbreak into, rested against the wall like a sleeping secret waiting to be woken. She had forgotten what it felt like to be wanted for her talent, to be seen for something beyond her struggles, to be more than a woman holding her life together with fraying threads. That night, after Jamie fell asleep, she stared at the painting, tracing the strokes she'd created in moments of despair. Could this really be the beginning of something? Or was this just another cruel trick the universe liked to play on people who had already lost too much? Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Tomorrow at 10 a.m. Cole Galleries. Bring yourself. I'll handle the rest. Adrian." It felt unreal. Terrifying. Electrifying. She looked around her cramped basement apartment, the peeling walls, the buzzing light, the floor that creaked under every step, and something inside her whispered, "You weren't meant to stay here forever." The next morning, she dressed carefully, smoothing the wrinkles out of her coat, braiding her hair the way she used to in college when she still believed she had a future in art. She held Jamie's hand as they walked to the bus stop, her daughter kicking softly inside her belly as if cheering her on. When she stepped into Cole Galleries, her breath caught. Sunlight streamed through high glass windows, gliding across polished floors and towering white walls. Beautiful art hung like quiet miracles. And for a moment, Elena felt like she didn't belong, just a struggling mother with paint-stained fingers and a pregnancy she could barely afford. Then she saw Adrian waiting near the center of the gallery, hands in his pockets, watching her with an expression that wasn't pity. It was recognition, as if he already knew what she could become. "I'm glad you came," he said. She swallowed. "I don't know why you're helping me." He hesitated, then answered with a softness that made her chest tighten. "Because once, a long time ago, I watched you paint for 5 minutes, and I've never forgotten it." Her heart stumbled. She didn't remember that moment, but he did. Before she could respond, he stepped aside and revealed something that made her gasp. Her painting cleaned, framed, and illuminated under gallery lights already hanging on the wall. Her name printed beneath it. And behind her, someone unexpected had just walked in, someone whose presence would ignite the first spark of chaos that neither she nor Adrian were ready for. The moment Elena saw her painting displayed under the gallery lights, her breath caught like someone had pressed pause on her entire world. It didn't look like something created in a cold basement by a woman breaking quietly each night. It looked powerful, bold, alive. For a heartbeat, she wondered if it truly belonged to her. Adrian watched her with a quiet satisfaction, as though confirming something he had known long before she ever stepped foot inside the gallery. But then, the bell above the gallery door chimed. Elena turned and her stomach tightened. It wasn't Caleb. It wasn't Riley. It was someone far more unexpected. A woman in a sleek navy coat approached with measured steps. Her presence alone demanded attention. Elena recognized her immediately from magazine features. Margot Hale, a high-profile art consultant known for shaping the careers of rising artists across New York. What was she doing here? Margot's sharp eyes drifted to the painting on the wall, and she stopped mid-stride. "Who is the artist?" she asked, her tone clipped yet intrigued. Adrian smiled slightly. "You're looking at her." Margot turned to Elena, assessing, scanning, almost dissecting. It made Elena's pulse climb. People like Margot didn't walk into small galleries by accident, and they certainly didn't pause unless something truly mattered. "You created this?" Margot asked. Elena swallowed. "Yes. It's raw, unfiltered, pain translated into movement. It's—" Margot hesitated, searching for the right word. "Undeniably arresting." Elena blinked, unsure she'd heard right. Margot reached into her bag and pulled out a card. "I'm curating the spring exhibition at the Plaza, a charity auction. I'd like to include your work if you can create 2 more pieces in the same emotional vein." Elena felt dizzy. Jamie tugged her sleeve, whispering, "Mom, she wants your art?" His eyes sparkled with something she hadn't seen in months' pride. She nodded shakily. "I can do that." Margot handed her the card. "Good. Don't lose this opportunity. Artists like you appear once every few years. Don't bury yourself again." With that, she left as quickly as she arrived. Elena stared at the card in her hand, her name typed under the painting behind her. Sunlight catching her future like a spotlight meant only for her. Her pulse trembled, her baby kicked. Jamie grinned. For the first time in a long time, the path ahead didn't look like survival. It looked like destiny. But neither Elena nor Adrian realized that this single opportunity would soon draw the attention of 2 people determined to destroy her comeback, and one of them was already on the way. Caleb Foster had always believed life would bend for him. Promotions came easily. People forgave him quickly. Consequences rarely lingered long enough to sting. But 2 years can turn a king into a ghost. By the time Elena's painting hung proudly inside Cole Galleries, Caleb was sitting in a cramped office cubicle, far from his former executive corner suite, his tailored suits replaced by clearance rack shirts. His name no longer spoken with admiration, but with caution. The first blow came when the company discovered irregularities in financial reports. He had signed off irregularities Riley had assured him were nothing to worry about. Except Riley was nowhere to be found now. She didn't answer his calls, didn't return his messages, didn't even leave her new address. She had moved on to a wealthier investor, whispering the same sweet lies she once fed him. Caleb had lost everything, and the more he thought about it, the more he convinced himself it was Elena's fault. After all, if she had stayed, if she had forgiven him, if she hadn't made a scene the night she caught them, maybe none of this would have unraveled. Delusion has a way of protecting fragile egos. So when he stumbled across a post online, a photo of Elena standing beside her framed painting at Cole Galleries, his jaw tightened. She looked different, confident, strangely radiant, even in simple clothes. Beside her stood Adrian Cole, hand resting subtly on the frame, his expression almost proud. Caleb's blood ran hot. Adrian Cole, the billionaire gallery owner, the man known for discovering hidden talent. And Elena, his Elena, was standing in Adrian's world now, carrying Caleb's unborn daughter, looking happier than she ever had with him. Caleb shoved his chair back so hard it nearly toppled. A coworker glanced over, startled, but he didn't care. All he saw was the woman he thought would wait for him forever, rising without him. And something ugly twisted inside him. "No," he muttered under his breath. "She doesn't get to move on, not without talking to me." That night, rain hammered against his apartment windows as Caleb stared at the gallery photo again and again until his vision blurred. He would go to her. He would make her listen. He would remind her that she was still legally tied to him, that child still had his last name. He convinced himself she owed him that much. What Caleb didn't know, what fate was preparing to teach him, was that Elena's life no longer had room for the man who once broke her, and that his attempt to reclaim her would trigger a chain of consequences he could never escape. Caleb showed up on a Thursday evening, the kind of cold New York night that made streetlights flicker and strangers hurry home. Elena had just finished warming a pot of soup, Jamie's backpack still on the floor, when a shadow crossed the frosted glass of her front door. A knock followed. Sharp, impassing, unmistakable. Her chest tightened. She hadn't seen Caleb in months, not since the night he locked her out of their home and told her she needed space. Now he was standing on the other side of the door as if the past 2 years were nothing more than a long weekend apart. Jamie looked up from his drawing. "Mom, is it him?" Elena steadied herself. "Stay near me." When she opened the door, the man who once carried himself like a king now looked like someone searching for shelter he didn't deserve. His hair was unkempt, his suit rumpled, his confidence drained into something desperate. "Elena," he breathed, as if saying her name gave him oxygen. "We need to talk." She didn't step aside. "There's nothing left to say." Caleb's eyes flicked to her belly rounder now, unmistakably carrying his daughter, and something like entitlement sparked there. "You should have told me she was still doing okay. I have a right to know." "You lost that right," Elena said quietly. Jamie stepped forward, shoulders squared just like the night he told Caleb she no longer cried. That memory stung Caleb enough to make him glance away. "Elena, listen," Caleb said, lowering his voice. "I'm not proud of everything that happened. Riley, she used me, she lied, she ruined my job, my reputation, and you ruined our family." Her voice didn't shake. "You did that all on your own." Caleb swallowed, anger flickering beneath a thin layer of regret. "I want us back. I want my life back. I want my daughter to have a father." Elena's breath caught not because of his words, but because of what she saw behind him. Adrian's car, a sleek Mercedes, was pulling into the driveway. Caleb noticed her shift in focus and turned. His jaw clenched as Adrian stepped out, calm and collected, dressed in a soft charcoal coat that seemed to dim Caleb's entire presence. Adrian approached slowly, his eyes landing on Elena first. "Everything okay here?" Caleb bristled. "Who the hell are you?" Adrian didn't answer immediately. Instead, he placed a steady hand on Elena's shoulder, protective but gentle. "Someone who won't let her be bullied again." Caleb's face twisted in shock and something darker. "She's still my wife?" Elena stepped back, lifting her chin. "No, Caleb, I'm not." Silence fell. Thick, heavy, inevitable. And in that moment, the line between Elena's past and her future finally snapped, setting off a confrontation that neither man was prepared to face. Caleb hadn't expected resistance, not from Elena, and certainly not from the man now standing between them. He took a step forward, jaw clenched, as if sheer proximity could pull her back into the gravity of his life. "Elena, we're not done," he insisted, voice cracking under the weight of entitlement disguised as sincerity. "You can't just throw away years of marriage." Elena steadied herself, palm resting instinctively on her belly as her daughter shifted inside her. "You threw it away first." Adrian didn't move, but his presence alone was a barricade. Calm, unshaken, the kind of authority that didn't need raised voices or threats. His hand remained on Elena's shoulder, quietly protective. Caleb's eyes narrowed. "So that's it? You're replacing me with some rich gallery guy?" Elena's eyebrows lifted. "No, I'm replacing the version of myself who let you break me." Caleb flinched, as if the words struck deeper than he expected. For a moment, he softened, regret flickering. "I messed up. Riley, she lied to me, manipulated me. I thought she loved me." Elena felt something cold settle in her chest. "You didn't cheat because you were tricked. You cheated because it was easy." Jamie appeared beside her, clutching the edge of her coat. His small voice cut through the air like a blade. "Mom doesn't cry because of you anymore." Caleb's composure cracked. He knelt, reaching for Jamie. "Buddy, come here. I'm still your dad." Jamie stepped back sharply. "You left us." The simplicity of the statement made Caleb's throat tighten. Children didn't need complicated explanations. They saw truth in its purest, most painful form. Adrian finally spoke, tone measured. "I think you should go." "I wasn't talking to you," Caleb snapped. "No," Adrian replied, gaze steady, "but you're upsetting her, and that ends now." Caleb rose abruptly, attempting to tower over Adrian, but it didn't work. Wealth, power, and influence didn't scream from Adrian. They radiated quietly, effortlessly, the way real authority does. "Elena," Caleb pleaded, voice shaking, "please, just give me a chance to explain." She exhaled slowly, meeting his eyes, really meeting them for the first time in years. "There's nothing left for you to explain, and nothing left for me to feel." Her words hung in the air, final, irrevocable. Caleb's mask fell away, revealing a man who'd never truly believed he could lose. He staggered back, breath unsteady, disbelief twisting his features. "This isn't over," he whispered. But Elena didn't respond. She simply closed the door physically, emotionally, permanently. On the other side, Caleb stood alone in the hallway, realizing too late that the woman he once abandoned had rebuilt herself into someone he could never reach again. What none of them knew was that Riley, silent for months, had just re-entered the picture, ready to ignite chaos that would make tonight look like the calm before a storm. Elena never expected the world to notice her again, not as a wife, not as a woman abandoned, but as an artist. Yet 2 days after slamming the door on Caleb, her phone buzzed with an email that made her entire body go still. Subject line: "Official invitation, spring exhibition at the Plaza Hotel." Her hands shook as she clicked it open. Margot Hale's name sat at the bottom of the message like a seal of destiny. "Elena, your submission has been reviewed. We are formally inviting you to showcase 3 original pieces at the Plaza's Spring Charity Gala. Your work will open the exhibition." His M.H. Her breath caught. The Plaza. A place she used to walk past on cold evenings, staring at the glowing windows and imagining a life where she belonged to something more. Now her paintings, born from heartbreak and survival, would hang inside those very walls. Jamie hugged her stomach, cheering. "Mom, you're gonna be famous." For once, Elena didn't correct him. She let herself smile, really smile, feeling her daughter kick as if celebrating too. But as quickly as joy bloomed, dread crept in. Because success had a way of drawing out shadows. Later that afternoon, as she packed her paints for the new pieces, Adrian arrived with a soft knock, nothing like Caleb's intrusion days earlier. He brought her a brand new set of brushes wrapped in tissue, the kind real artists used, the kind she'd never allowed herself to even touch. "I heard the news," Adrian said, eyes bright with pride. "You earned this." Elena felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I'm scared." "That's how you know it matters." He stayed for a while, helping her rearrange her tiny basement studio space into something that looked like possibility. When he finally left, Jamie whispered, "Mom, I like him. He makes you look less sad." She didn't respond. She wasn't ready to feel anything except stability. But deep down, she knew Adrian was becoming something she didn't dare name yet. Just as the evening settled into a warm calm, Elena's phone buzzed again. A text. From an unknown number. "Congrats on the Plaza. See you there." Her blood ran cold. She knew that tone. That smugness. Riley. The woman she once trusted more than family. The woman who stole her husband, her home, her peace. The woman who vanished when Caleb fell apart, and now she was coming back? No explanation. No apology. Just a threat disguised as a greeting. Elena stared at the screen, heart pounding. Because if Riley planned to show up at the plaza, it meant this wasn't just a comeback for Elena. It was the beginning of a war Riley never expected Elena to be strong enough to fight. Riley Donovan always had a talent for arriving exactly when she wasn't wanted, and exactly when she could do the most damage. Elena stared at the text on her phone, heart pounding, old wounds ripping open in places she thought had already healed. See you at the plaza. No emoji. No warmth. Just a promise wrapped in venom. The next morning, Elena stepped into Cole Galleries to work on her new pieces. She tucked the phone deep into her pocket, refusing to let Riley steal even one more moment of her piece. But the universe wasn't done with surprises. Because Riley didn't wait for the plaza, she showed up that day. Elena was mixing paints when she heard high heels clicking across the gallery floor, sharp, confident, flawlessly timed. Adrian turned first, his expression darkening instantly. "Elena," he murmured quietly, "don't panic." She turned anyway. There Riley stood, dressed in a fitted white coat, hair perfectly curled, the image of a woman who never paid for her mistakes. Her eyes scanned the gallery until they landed on Elena's pregnant belly. "Oh," Riley said sweetly, lips curling. "You're still pregnant." Elena inhaled slowly. "What do you want, Riley?" Riley walked closer, trailing her fingers along the edge of a sculpture she had no business touching. "I heard you're showing at the plaza. Quite the upgrade from your basement, isn't it?" Adrian stepped forward. "This is a private workspace." Riley ignored him. "I'm curating for a new investor now, very powerful man. The plaza is one of the venues he sponsors." "So technically," she smiled, "you'll be showing under my event umbrella." Elena felt her stomach twist. Whether from pregnancy or fury, she wasn't sure. Riley continued, voice smooth as poison. "And since I know your emotional history, I'll be advising the committee to review your work carefully. We can't have instability in artists representing the charity." Adrian's jaw tightened. "You're not going near her file." Riley's eyes glinted. "Watch me." Then she leaned in close enough for Elena to smell her designer perfume, the same brand she used to borrow from Elena's dresser years ago. "You won't survive in my world, Elena," she whispered. "You never did." Elena's throat burned, but she refused to let Riley see her break. Not again, not ever. Riley turned to leave, but before pushing open the gallery door, she glanced back with a wicked grin. "Oh, and Caleb told me he might stop by again. He thinks you still care." Adrian stepped forward sharply, fury in his voice. "Get out." Riley left, heels clicking a victory march. Elena's hands trembled not from fear, but from awakening strength. Because now she understood something clearly. Riley wasn't coming to watch her fail. She was coming because she knew Elena might finally win. And for the first time, Elena wasn't the one who looked small. Riley was. After Riley's heels vanished out the gallery door, the silence she left behind felt sharp enough to cut. Elena stood frozen, paintbrush still in her fingers, heart pounding in a rhythm she hadn't felt since the night everything in her life collapsed. Adrian approached slowly, like he was afraid sudden movement might shatter her. "Elena," he said softly, "don't let her get inside your head." But Riley had already gotten in. She always did. She knew exactly where to poke, exactly how to reopen wounds Elena tried desperately to close. "What if she ruins the plaza for me?" Elena whispered. Her voice trembled. "She knows people. She knows how to twist things. She knows how to bully," Adrian corrected, gently lifting the brush from her hand before it slipped. "But she doesn't know how to beat someone who refuses to stay small." Elena's breath hitched. "I'm not strong enough." "Yes," Adrian said, stepping closer, eyes steady on hers. "You are. You just don't believe it yet." His certainty felt like a warm blanket thrown over her shaking shoulders. Just then, Margot Hale walked into the gallery, her expression sharp as ever. "I just spoke with your investor," she said to Adrian. "Riley Donovan is trying to push Elena off the gala list." Elena felt her stomach drop. Margot turned to her. "She sent a message to the committee claiming your emotional instability could impact the auction, and she implied your work might not be original." Elena froze. She tasted iron in her mouth. Riley's betrayal wasn't just personal anymore, she was attempting to erase Elena professionally. Before she could speak, Adrian did. "That's a lie," he said, his voice dropping into a tone Elena had never heard from him. Protective, commanding, final. And if she tries to sabotage her, she will answer to me. Margot raised an eyebrow. You're prepared to escalate? Adrian didn't hesitate. Absolutely. Elena blinked. Adrian, you don't have to involve yourself. Yes, he interrupted softly, I do. She swallowed hard. Why? He looked at her, really looked at her, at the exhaustion, the fight, the quiet courage she didn't know she had. Because you deserve to rise without someone constantly trying to drag you back into the dark, he said. And because, whether you realize it or not, there are people who want to see you win. A lump formed in her throat. Margot crossed her arms. I'll take care of the committee, but Elena, you need to finish your pieces. Once they see them, Riley won't stand a chance. Elena exhaled shakily. She nodded. She wasn't just painting anymore. She was fighting back with color, with truth, with every breath she had left. What none of them realized was that Riley wasn't done yet, and her next move would strike at the one thing Elena couldn't protect with art alone. The news of Elena's rising success spread faster than she expected. It leaked from Margot's circle into Manhattan's art scene, then into corporate circles Caleb desperately wanted to return to. And jealousy, for a man like him, was a slow-burning poison. By the end of the week, he showed up again. This time, not at her home, but at Cole Galleries. Adrian and Elena were reviewing lighting angles for her pieces when the gallery doors swung open with a force that made all three of them turn. Caleb stood in the entrance, chest heaving, eyes wild with something Elena recognized instantly. Panic, disguised as anger. I want to talk to my wife, he demanded, ignoring Adrian entirely. Ex-wife, Elena almost corrected, but she didn't bother. He wasn't here for truth. He was here because her success threatened him more than her suffering ever had. Adrian stepped forward. You need to leave. Now. Caleb let out a sharp laugh. Oh, I get it. You think you can swoop in and play hero, acting like you care about her work, about her kid? He spat the last word like it was an inconvenience. Jamie, who had been quietly drawing in the corner, looked up eyes wide, frightened. Elena's heartbeat stumbled. Don't talk about him, she snapped. Caleb sneered. Why? He's still mine. And when this baby is born, she'll be mine too. You think Adrian's going to raise someone else's kid? That was the moment Adrian moved. He didn't shout, didn't threaten, didn't puff his chest like Caleb. He stepped between Elena and Caleb with a calm power that made even Margot's stern posture look gentle. You will not speak to her like that, Adrian said. And you will not speak about her children like they are possessions. Caleb's jaw tightened. Stay out of this. I won't, Adrian replied, because Elena is not alone anymore, and because everything you're trying to take from her, she earned without you. Caleb's face darkened, as if the truth scorched him from the inside. This isn't over. But when he turned toward Elena expecting fear, softness, hesitation, he found none. Instead, he found a woman whose spine was straighter than the day he married her. You don't get to choose when something is over, she said quietly. Not anymore. Caleb's nostrils flared, his hands clenched, but with Adrian standing firm and Margot already dialing security, he had no choice. He stormed out of the gallery, slamming the doors behind him so hard the frames rattled. Jamie ran into Elena's arms. Mom, he whispered, he's getting scarier. Elena held him tight, feeling her unborn daughter twist inside her, as if warning her too. What none of them realized was that Caleb's jealousy had snapped something inside him, and his next move wouldn't be emotional. It would be dangerous. Riley Donovan had always believed she was untouchable, floating through Manhattan's elite circles with carefully curated charm and a smile that never reached her eyes. But power built on lies is fragile, and the first crack appeared sooner than she expected. 2 days after Caleb's outburst at the gallery, Margot Hale stormed into Cole Galleries with her phone in hand and fury burning behind her glasses. Elena, she said sharply, you need to see this. Elena set down her brush, anxiety rising like a tide. Adrian joined them as Margot tapped her screen. A video began to play, grainy, shaky, secretly recorded. Riley, inside an upscale restaurant, speaking to the very investor who sponsored the Plaza event. At first, it sounded harmless, cocktail chatter and exaggerated laughter. But then Riley leaned in, her voice dropping into a whisper perfectly captured by the microphone hidden nearby. I'm going to make sure Elena Marlowe never exhibits again. She's emotionally unstable, financially desperate, and her work isn't even original. If the committee listens to me and trusts me, they do. She'll be blacklisted by spring. Elena's chest constricted. Her pregnancy made emotions sharper, deeper, harder to contain. Her daughter kicked as if sensing the tension. Margot continued, "This was sent anonymously to the committee. They're furious. Not at you, at her." She violated ethics guidelines and attempted to manipulate an event sponsor. Adrian exhaled slowly, jaw tight. Riley finally exposed herself. But Margot wasn't finished. "There's more." She pulled up a second clip, this time of Riley and Caleb arguing outside a hotel. He demanded money she owed him. She laughed, saying, "Caleb, you pathetic man. If you hadn't doctored those financial reports for me, none of this would have blown up." Elena's breath caught. Adrian's face hardened. Margot cursed under her breath. That was it. The nail in Riley's professional coffin, and the final confirmation that Caleb's downfall had been orchestrated by her, not fate. Margot looked at Elena with something like admiration. "You don't have to lift a finger. Riley just destroyed herself." Elena sank into a chair, overwhelmed. "I never wanted revenge." "You didn't seek it," Adrian said gently. "But people like Riley, they create their own consequences." Jamie peeked in from the doorway. "Mom? Are you okay?" Elena smiled softly. "Yes, sweetheart. For once, I really am." And yet, beneath the relief, something darker simmered. Because when Margot left, Adrian pulled Elena aside and lowered his voice. "There's one problem." "What?" "Caleb knows Riley betrayed him. And men who lose everything don't always think clearly." A chill crept up Elena's spine. Because Riley wasn't the only one unraveling. Caleb was about to make a desperate move that would push everyone into a confrontation none of them were ready for. The day after Riley's downfall flooded the art world, Elena arrived at Cole Galleries expecting a quiet morning of painting. Instead, she walked into a scene that stopped her in her tracks. Adrian stood in the center of the gallery beside a long mahogany table. On it lay a stack of documents neatly arranged, a Mont Blanc pen placed beside them. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, catching the edges of the papers like they were glowing. "Adrian?" Elena asked cautiously. "What's all this?" He turned, offering a gentle but unreadable smile. "This is your future." Her heartbeat quickened. "What do you mean?" He stepped aside, allowing her to see the embossed header on the first page. Cole Galleries, exclusive artist, contract, full representation. Elena blinked. "This can't be for me." "It is," Adrian said softly. "Your work has already attracted 2 collectors after Margot shared previews. They want to invest before your Plaza exhibition." Elena's knees weakened. She had to grip the table to steady herself. She wasn't used to life offering gifts only blows. "I don't know if I'm ready for something this big," she whispered. Adrian shook his head. "You've been ready for years. Life just kept getting in the way." Jamie ran in, eyes bright. "Mom, is that your name?" Elena smiled shakily. "Yes, sweetheart." As she gestured for Jamie to come closer, the gallery door suddenly swung open. All 3 turned. Caleb. His face was pale, eyes bloodshot, desperation clinging to him like a second skin. He hadn't shaved, his clothes were wrinkled, a man unraveling. "Elena, we need to talk," he insisted, voice hoarse. Adrian moved instantly, stepping between them. "You're not welcome here." Caleb ignored him, his gaze locked on the contract, then on Elena's belly, his expression twisted jealousy, fear, and something more dangerous. "You're signing with him?" Caleb spat. "You think this changes anything? You're still my wife. That baby is still mine." Elena's pulse pounded. "We're separated, Caleb. Legally and emotionally." Caleb slammed his hand on the table. Jamie jumped, startled. Adrian's eyes darkened with protective fury. "You're not taking my family away," Caleb roared. "You owe me." "I owe you nothing," Elena said, voice trembling but strong. "You lost this family the day you chose Riley." Caleb staggered back, stunned by the force of her words. Security arrived. Margot had already called them. Caleb was escorted out, rage echoing through the gallery like a warning. When the doors closed behind him, Elena felt tears rise not from fear, but from something else entirely. Relief. Adrian picked up the Mont Blanc pen and placed it gently into her hand. "Elena," he murmured, "sign it. Choose your life, not the one you were thrown into, your real one." She looked at the contract, then at Jamie, then at Adrian, and with a steady breath, she signed her name. What Elena didn't know was that this signature wouldn't just change her career. It would set the stage for the final confrontation that would destroy Caleb's last illusion of control. Caleb Foster had always believed in second chances. Not for other people, but for himself. Every mistake he made, someone cleaned up. Every lie he told, someone believed. Every bridge he burned, someone rebuilt. But the universe had stopped rebuilding for him. After being escorted out of Cole Galleries, Caleb walked the Manhattan streets with no destination, shoulders hunched, rage simmering beneath his skin. He replayed Elena's words over and over, each one a blow to his ego. I owe you nothing. You lost this family. He refused to accept them. By the time he reached his apartment, a cramped studio far from the life he once flaunted, something inside him snapped. He tore open drawers, throwing clothes and papers in a frenzy until he found it. A worn manila folder. Inside copies of Elena's medical bills, old tax documents, marriage records, evidence of a life he no longer controlled. His hands trembled as he whispered to himself, "She can't just walk away. She can't." Then another thought crept in, dark, unstable. If he couldn't have her back, he could at least make sure no one else did. And the one person he despised more than Elena now was Adrian Cole. Caleb grabbed his coat and stormed out, fueled by an anger that felt more like survival than logic. Meanwhile, across the city, Elena was back at the gallery, painting the final strokes of her third plaza piece. Her daughter kicked rhythmically, as if sensing the moment her mother was stepping fully into a new life. Adrian watched from a distance, admiration softening his normally composed expression. "You paint differently now," he said. Elena glanced over her shoulder. "Is that a good thing? It means you're finally painting for yourself." She smiled an unguarded, real smile. But the peaceful moment shattered when Margot, breathless and pale, rushed into the studio. "Adrian, Elena, we have a problem." Adrian straightened immediately. What happened? Margot hesitated for the first time since they'd met her. Someone leaked confidential committee notes. The Plaza team received an anonymous email claiming Elena's pregnancy is a liability for the event. Elena's heart dropped. "A liability?" Margot nodded grimly. "They're reconsidering your opening spot." Elena felt the room tilt like the past was grabbing her ankles. Adrian's voice hardened. "This is Caleb." "Or Riley," Margot added. But the message came from a personal account, one tied to Caleb's old job. Elena pressed a hand to her stomach as her daughter twisted sharply. Jamie walked in at that moment, sensing the tension. "Mom, did something bad happen?" Elena forced a steady breath. "Not if we fight it." Adrian placed a reassuring hand on her back. "We will, I promise." But outside, unseen from the gallery windows, Caleb stood in the shadows, watching, listening, and planning a move that would drag all of them into the final storm. One that would decide who truly lost and who finally won. The night of the Plaza's spring exhibition arrived like a coronation. The chandeliers glittered, the marble floors gleamed, and Elena, dressed in a soft, elegant gown that complemented her pregnancy glow, felt like she was stepping into a world she once believed she'd never touch again. Jamie held her hand tightly. Adrian walked beside her, calm yet fiercely protective. The moment she entered, heads turned, not out of pity, but admiration. For the first time, she belonged. Margot approached with a tight smile. "The committee reviewed everything. You're opening the exhibition. Riley's influence is gone." Relief washed over Elena, but only briefly. Because just as the applause rose and her first piece illuminated under the spotlight, a commotion rippled across the ballroom. Caleb. He stormed into the plaza like a storm wearing a suit. Security trailed him, but he pushed forward, eyes locked on Elena with a frantic intensity that made her stomach clench. "Elena," he shouted, voice cracking, "we're not done." Gasps spread across the room like wildfire. Riley appeared behind him, face pale, suddenly realizing Caleb's unraveling could drag her down too. Adrian stepped in front of Elena instantly. "You need to leave, Caleb." But Caleb was far past listening. "You ruined me," he screamed. "Both of you. You think you can replace me? You think you can erase me?" Elena felt her daughter twist sharply inside her. Jamie clung to her, eyes wide with fear. Margot signaled security, but Caleb moved faster. He lunged toward the stage, toward the painting Elena had poured her entire soul into. "No," Elena cried, but someone else reached him first. Adrian. In one decisive motion, Adrian blocked Caleb's path, grabbing his arm before he could rip the artwork off the wall. Caleb swung wildly, fueled by humiliation and desperation. The impact echoed through the ballroom. Guests backed away, stunned. Security rushed forward, pinning Caleb to the ground as he thrashed. "She's mine. She was always mine." Elena stepped toward him, trembling but not afraid. "No, Caleb," she said, voice steady. "I was never yours. You lost me long before you realized you needed me." Caleb froze, the words hitting harder than any physical blow. Riley tried to slip out unnoticed, but Margot caught her arm. "Not so fast. Your little sabotage campaign ends tonight." As Caleb was dragged out of the plaza, screaming empty threats, the ballroom fell silent until applause erupted. It wasn't for the spectacle. It was for Elena. For surviving, for standing tall, for reclaiming her life in front of an entire city. Adrian turned to her, eyes soft. "It's over." Elena looked around the lights, the artwork, the people who believed in her. "No," she whispered, tears rising. "It's beginning." What Elena didn't know yet was that her final triumph and the most emotional moment of her life was waiting just one sunrise away. The morning after the Plaza Gala felt different, as if the entire city had shifted slightly to make room for Elena's new beginning. Sunlight poured through the windows of her small apartment, soft and golden, warming the hardwood floor where Jamie played with his sketchbook. For the first time in years, Elena woke without dread pressing against her chest. Her phone buzzed with messages, congratulations from collectors, inquiries from magazines, invitations to interviews. But one message stood out. "Meet me at the gallery. There's something you need to see." Adrian. Curiosity fluttered inside her. She dressed slowly, one hand resting on her belly, her daughter kicking gently like she, too, wanted to know what waited for them. When she arrived at Cole Galleries, the doors were already open. Adrian stood in the center of the room, but he wasn't alone. A group of board members surrounded him, people Elena had only seen in art publications. Adrian stepped toward her, expression soft. "Elena." After last night, the board voted unanimously. She blinked. "Voted on what?" His smile deepened. "To name you the permanent resident artist of Cole Galleries. Your own studio space, full salary, healthcare, everything you need for you and your children." Elena's breath caught. She felt the air leave her lungs as tears filled her eyes. Jamie ran ahead of her, spinning with excitement. "Mom, you have your own studio." She covered her mouth, overwhelmed. "Adrian, I don't know what to say." "Say yes," he answered simply. "Say yes to a life you deserve." Her heart swelled slowly at first, then fiercely. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. But Adrian wasn't finished. He reached into his coat and took out a small velvet box, not flashy, not overwhelming, just sincere. He opened it to reveal a delicate ring adorned with a single sapphire, the color of resilience. "Elena," he said quietly, "I don't want to replace anything or anyone. I just want to build something new with you, if you'll let me." Her breath trembled. Not from fear. From healing. "Yes," she whispered. Adrian exhaled, relief washing over his features as he slipped the ring onto her finger. Jamie cheered, hugging both of them with all the force his small arms could offer. And somewhere across the city, Caleb signed the final restraining order papers. Jobless, reputation ruined, legally barred from contacting Elena again. His downfall wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, lonely, and exactly the ending he had earned. As Elena stood in her new studio, sunlight spilling over canvases yet to be painted, she held her belly and smiled. Her daughter kicked, as if agreeing. Because this wasn't a return to who Elena used to be. It was the beginning of who she was always meant to become. All right, so that's the end of Elena's journey. And if you're still here with me right now, it means something in her story touched your heart in a way you maybe didn't expect. So let's breathe together for a moment and look at what this really means for your life. In Elena's path, we're reminded of a powerful Stoic truth from Marcus Aurelius. The obstacle is the way. Every betrayal, every dark night, every door slammed in her face became the very force that pushed her toward the life she was meant to live. She didn't rise because life was easy. She rose because she decided she was worth more than the pain she survived. And maybe you're facing something right now too. A loss, a heartbreak, a moment where you feel small. But remember, you are not defined by what broke you. You are defined by what you choose to build next. Like Elena, healing doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it begins quietly, with one brave decision to not give up on yourself. If this story gave you strength, comfort, or even just a little spark of hope, then stay with us. Like, share, and subscribe so more people can find stories that remind them they're not alone and that their comeback is always possible, no matter how impossible life feels today. Because you being here means your heart is ready for something new too.